It's the 22nd of July, and tonight is the 7th night. We're talking on the Digha Nikaya. Tonight we come to Sutta number 11, Kevaddha Sutta. This is quite an important sutta. Thus have I heard. Once the Lord was staying at Nalanda in Paparika's mango grove, and the householder Kevaddha came to the Lord, prostrated himself before him, and sat down to one side. Then he said, Lord, this Nalanda is rich, prosperous, populous, and full of people who have faith in the Lord. It would be well if the Lord were to cause some monk to perform superhuman feats and miracles. In this way, Nalanda would come to have even more faith in the Lord. The Lord replied, Kevaddha, this is not the way I teach Dhamma to the monks by saying, Go monks and perform superhuman feats and miracles for the white-cloth lay people. For a second time, Kevaddha said, Lord, I would not be importunate, but I still say, this Nalanda is rich, prosperous, full of people who have faith in the Lord. It would be well if the Lord were to cause some monk to perform superhuman feats and miracles. In this way, Nalanda would come to have even more faith in the Lord. And the Lord replied as before. When Kevaddha repeated his request for a third time, the Lord said, Kevaddha, there are three kinds of miracle that I have declared, having realized them by my own insight. Which three? The miracle of psychic power, the miracle of telepathy, the miracle of instruction. What is the miracle of psychic power? Here, Kevaddha, among displays various psychic powers in different ways. Being one, he becomes many. Being many, he becomes one, etc., etc. And he travels in the body as far as the Brahma world. This description of the various psychic powers, as in Sutta number 2 previously. Then someone who has faith and trust sees him doing these things. He tells this to someone else who is skeptical and unbelieving, saying, It is wonderful, sir, it is marvelous, the great power and skill of that ascetic, etc. And that man might say, Sir, there is something called the Gandhara charm. It is by means of this that monk becomes many, etc. What do you think, Kevaddha? Would not a skeptic say that to a believer? He would, Lord. And that is why, Kevaddha, seeing the danger of such miracles, I dislike, reject, and despise them. And what is the miracle of telepathy? Here a monk reads the minds of other beings, of other people, reads their mental states, their thoughts and ponderings, and says, That is how your mind is. That is how it inclines. That is in your heart. Then someone who has faith and trust sees him doing these things. He tells this to someone else who is skeptical and unbelieving, saying, It is wonderful, sir, it is marvelous, the great power and skill of that ascetic, etc. And that man might say, Sir, there is something called the Manika charm. It is by means of this that monk can read the minds of others. And that is why, seeing the danger of such miracles, I despise them. Stop here for a moment. Here, the Buddha is saying, if his monks display psychic powers, those with faith in the Buddha and the disciples, they would be impressed by it. They would like it. But if the believing lay person were to tell some other person who does not have faith in the Buddha and the disciples, then he would say that they are using these different types of charm. I think the Pali word is vijja, and this actually refers to the mantras. In India, these mantras were handed down from the Brahmins, and mantras are words of power. There is no meaning in those words. But possibly it was handed down by the Devas to the Brahmins, because a long time ago the Brahmins, they were ascetics and they practiced meditation until they could see and converse with Devas, and probably they learned these things. So these mantras can allow a person to do those things that a person with psychic power can do, like fly through the air, multiply the body, walk through the wall, dive into the earth like diving into water, walking on the surface of the water, etc. And similarly, with reading the minds of others. So the Buddha says, if the miracles were shown to people, those who are skeptical, they would not believe. And what is the miracle of instruction? Here, Kevaddha, a monk gives instruction as follows. Consider in this way, don't consider in that. Direct your mind this way, not that way. Give up that, gain this, and persevere in it. That Kevaddha is called the miracle of instruction. Again, Kevaddha, a Tathagata arises in the world, an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, endowed with wisdom and conduct, well-farer, knower of the worlds, incomparable trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. He, having realized it by his own super-knowledge, proclaims this world with its devas, maras and brahmas, its princes and people. He preaches the Dhamma, which is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, lovely in its ending, in the spirit and in the letter, and displays the fully perfected and purified holy life. A disciple goes forth and practices the moralities, as in Sutta 2, verses 41 to 63. He guards the sense doors and attains the 4 jhanas, also found previously in Sutta 2. He attains various insights. He realizes the 4 noble truths, the path and cessation of the asavas, and he knows there is nothing further here. That Kevaddha is called the miracle of instruction. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says the miracle of instruction is to teach a person, and then if the person practices the holy life, practices the firstly by teaching that person, when the person hears the Dhamma, he has faith, and he goes forth. Having gone forth, then he practices the conduct of the holy life, or the practice of the holy life, which I said was charana. And from practicing charana, which culminates in the 4 jhanas, then he attains various knowledges, higher knowledges, and finally liberation, and this is called the miracle of instruction. And I, Kevaddha, have experienced these 3 miracles by my own super knowledge. Once, Kevaddha, in this order of monks, the thought occurred to a certain monk, I wonder where the 4 great elements, the earth element, water element, fire element, air element, cease without remainder. And the monk attained to such a state of mental concentration that the way to the Deva realms appeared before him. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, there was at one time a certain monk was thinking about these 4 great elements. These 4 great elements, earth, water, fire, wind, describes the physical world. The physical world, in Pali, it's rupa. Rupa consists of these 4 elements. The earth element means the hardness element. The water is the liquid things that cohere together. The fire element is the heat element. The air is the motion element. So the physical world can be described by these 4 elements. And this monk wanted to know where the 4 great elements cease without remainder. In others, where does the world end? Because he thought this world is a world of suffering. It would be good if the world were to cease. So he attained a state of mental concentration that the way to the Deva realms appeared before him. So here you see this sentence is quite interesting. He meditated until his mind became so concentrated that the Deva realms appeared in front of him. So this confirms our Buddhist belief that the world actually exists in consciousness, in the mind. If you were to be able to develop your mind like this monk, then you are able to see and go and visit the various realms of existence, like the Buddha and the Arahant disciples. So you want to go to the Deva realm, it's not by chanting the Buddha's name. It's by meditating until the Deva realms appear before you. Then coming to the realm of the Devas, of the four great kings, he asked those Devas, friends, where do the four great elements, earth, water, fire, wind, cease without remainder? At this question, the Devas of the four great kings said to him, Monk, we don't know where the four great elements cease without remainder. But the four great kings are loftier and wiser than we are. They may know where the four great elements cease. So these Devas, they could not reply. They say, you go and see our kings, the four kings, they should be wiser, they will know. So that monk went to the four great kings and asked the same question. But they replied, we don't know, but the 33 gods may know. So they say the higher gods may know. So that monk went to the 33 gods who said, we don't know, but Sakka Devaraja may know. Then he went to ask Sakka Devaraja, and Sakka Devaraja also didn't know. He said the Yama Devas may know. Then this monk went to the Yama Devas, and they also didn't know. They say maybe our king, Suyama, son of the Deva, may know. Then when the monk asked Suyama, he also didn't know. He said the higher Tusita Devas may know. Then the monk went to the Tusita Devas and asked them, and they also didn't know. They said their king, Santusita, may know. And then when Santusita was asked, he also didn't know. So he said the fifth heaven, Nimana Rati Devas may know. And when the monk asked them, they also didn't know. They said, go and ask our king, Sunimita. And when he asked Sunimita also couldn't answer. He said, the sixth heaven, the Devas called Paranimita Vasavati Devas may know. So the monk went to them and asked them. They also didn't know. They said their king, Vasavati, may know. And then when the monk asked Vasavati Devaraja, he also couldn't answer. He said, maybe the Devas of Brahma's retinue may know. Then that monk, by the appropriate concentration, made the way to the Brahma world appear before him. He went to the Devas of Brahma's retinue and asked them. They said, we don't know. But there is Brahma, great Brahma, the conqueror, the unconquered, the all-seeing, all-powerful, the Lord, maker and creator, ruler, appointer and orderer, father of all that have been and shall be. He is loftier and wiser than we are. He would know where the four great elements cease without remainder. And where, friends, is this great Brahma now? And they said, monk, we do not know when, how and where Brahma will appear. But when the signs are seen, when a light appears and a radiance shines forth, then Brahma will appear. Such signs are an indication that he will appear. Then it was not before long the great Brahma appeared. And that monk went up to him and said, friend, where do the four great elements, earth, water, fire, air or wind, cease without remainder? Stop here for a moment. So you notice here, in this sutta, it talks as far as the first jhana realm, the Brahma's heaven. Here the sutta talks about Brahma's retinue and Mahabrahma, the great Brahma. But in later books, they added ministers of Brahma. So it is by adding a few things like this, they created the 31 planes of existence. This 31 planes of existence is very well known. But actually, a lot of people don't know. It comes from later books. The Buddha never talked about 31 planes of existence. The Buddha only talked about 5 realms of existence. The heavens, which are the highest, then the human realm, and then below that, the 3 woeful planes. As far as the heavens are concerned, he did mention a few heavens. So like in this Brahma realm, he only talked about 2, Brahma's retinue and the great Brahma. But later books they added. So the great Brahma replied, monk, I am Brahma, Mahabrahma, the conqueror, unconquered, all-seeing, all-powerful, Lord, maker and creator, ruler, appointer and orderer, Father of all that have been and shall be. The second time the monk said, Friend, I did not ask if you are Brahma, great Brahma, the conqueror, etc. I asked you where the four great elements cease without remainder. And the second time the great Brahma replied as before, I am Brahma, Maha Brahma, conqueror, unconquered, all-seeing, all-powerful, etc. And the third time the monk said, Friend, I did not ask you that. I asked where the four great elements, earth, water, fire, air, cease without remainder. Then Kevaddha, Maha Brahma, the great Brahma, took that monk by the arm, led him aside and said, Monk, these devas believe there is nothing Brahma does not see, there is nothing he does not know, there is nothing he is unaware of. That is why I did not speak in front of them. But monk, I don't know where the four great elements cease without remainder. And therefore, monk, you have acted wrongly, you have acted incorrectly by going beyond the Blessed Lord and going in search of an answer to this question elsewhere. Now, monk, you just go to the Blessed Lord and put this question to him, and whatever answer he gives, accept it. Then, so that monk, as swiftly as a strong man might flex or unflex his arm, vanished from the Brahma world and appeared in my presence. He prostrated himself before me, then sat down to one side and said, Lord, where do the four great elements, the earth element, water element, fire element, air element, cease without remainder? Stop here for a moment. So you see, this monk, he has the greatest teacher in the world in front of him, and he doesn't realize. He goes looking for an answer elsewhere. This very often happens with disciples. They don't have enough faith in the teacher. And there's a saying, familiarity breeds contempt, is it? So when the teacher is too familiar with the disciple, and then the disciple does not respect. So here the greatest teacher, he has the greatest teacher in the world, but he goes to the heavens and asks all the devas, and not a single deva could answer him. And Maha Brahma asked him to go back to the Buddha. So he asked the Buddha, and the Buddha said, I replied, Monk, once upon a time, seafaring merchants, when they set sail on the ocean, took in their ship a land-sighting bird. When they could not see the land themselves, they released this bird. The bird flew to the east, to the south, to the west, to the north. It flew to the zenith and to the intermediate points of the compass. If it saw land anywhere, it flew there. But if it saw no land, it returned to the ship. In the same way, monk, you have been as far as the Brahma world, searching for an answer to your question, and not finding it, and now you come back to me. But monk, you should not ask your question in this way. Where do the four great elements, the earth element, water element, fire element, air element, cease without remainder? Instead, this is how the question should have been put. Where do earth, water, fire and air no footing find? Where are long and short, small and great, fair and foul? Where are name and form, or namarupa, wholly destroyed? Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha said, the way you ask, first the Buddha said, you go everywhere looking for an answer to your question, and you cannot find, now you come back to me, just like the bird in the ship. Then the Buddha said, you asked the question wrongly. The question the monk put, where do the four great elements cease without remainder? So the Buddha said, if you ask where the four elements cease without remainder, that means you think there is a place where you can get out of the world. But that is not the way to ask. Instead, the Buddha said, you should ask, where does earth, water and fire no footing find? That means have no opportunity to arise. Where are long and short, small and great, fair and foul? Namarupa, wholly destroyed. Because in this world, there's always this duality. If you have long, you have short. You have black, you have white. Small, great, fair, foul. So Also, in this world is made up of nama rupa. Nama rupa is the counterpart of vijnana. Vijnana is consciousness, and nama rupa is the object of consciousness. Whenever you have consciousness, you must have an object. As far as the world is concerned, you must have an object. So that object is nama rupa, and nama rupa means mentality and materiality. Materiality means the physical world that you are conscious of, and mentality is the mental part. Mental part, feelings, your own feelings, other people's feelings, your thoughts, other people's thoughts, etc. And the Buddha said, the answer is, where consciousness is signless, anidasanang, boundless, anantang, all luminous, sabato pahang. That's where earth, water, fire and air find no footing, or no footing find. There both long and short, small and great, fair and foul. There, nama rupa are wholly destroyed. With the cessation of consciousness, this is all destroyed. Thus the Lord spoke, and the householder, Kevaddha, delighted, rejoiced at his words. That's the end of the sutta. So this last part now is extremely important, because there are some people say that when you enter Nibbana, because this, where earth, water, fire and air have no chance to arise, no footing, it means the state of Nibbana. In the state of Nibbana, there is no world, because the world is a world of suffering. When you have the world, then you have long and short, small and great, fair and foul, etc. So, this state of Nibbana, the Buddha says, consciousness is signless. Signless means no object, boundless, all luminous, extremely bright, everywhere bright. There, earth, water and air, the physical world cannot arise, and all the discrimination, long and short, fair and great, black and white, everything is not there, and nama rupa also not there, and cessation. There is cessation of consciousness, so all this is destroyed. So the last part talking about the cessation of consciousness is a different consciousness from the earlier one. This cessation of consciousness refers to the cessation of the sixth consciousness, because I have mentioned before that the sixth consciousness creates the world, seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling, taste, touch. Consciousness creates the outer world, and thinking creates the inner world. So the sixth consciousness creates the world of nama rupa, the world of discrimination, long and short, small and great, fair and foul, black and white, etc., good and bad, etc. So that is the sixth consciousness. But in this state of Nibbana or Parinibbana, consciousness is signless. There is no object, boundless and luminous. So this state of Parinibbana is a different type of consciousness. So a lot of people they don't notice this sutta. So they say when you enter Nibbana, there's nothing, and no consciousness whatsoever. But here you can see there is a type of consciousness which is has no object. So when it has no object, there is no self, there is no other. When there is an object, for example, when seeing consciousness arises, and you think you see, then you have an eye seeing something, seeing an object, right? There's always this subject and object, as far as the sixth consciousness is concerned. But in this Nibbana state, or final Nibbana or Parinibbana, there is no object. So because there is no object, there is no subject. So there is no self. But even though there is no self, there is consciousness. So basically the whole world is consciousness lah. Just that looks like this consciousness can be divided in active consciousness and static consciousness lah. Just like kinetic energy and static energy lah, right? So the static state is like the consciousness that is not active lah. But when it's active, then a being comes, a being rises lah.